It started with a text, just a simple, harmless text. Or at least, that's what I told myself. Late night again? The message flashed on my screen, making my heart skip a beat. I hesitated for a moment before typing back, "Yeah, just finishing up some reports." "You." A reply came almost instantly. "Same. You should take a break." "Coffee." I shouldn't have said yes, but I did. Let me introduce myself. I'm Emily, a devoted wife, a mother of two, and a senior marketing executive at a firm where I've worked for nearly a decade. My husband, Daniel, is a good man, steady, reliable, and loving. Our marriage, from the outside, looked perfect. But inside, I had begun to feel like I was merely playing a role rather than living my life. We had fallen into a routine. Our conversations reduced to grocery lists and school schedules. The passion we once shared had dimmed, and I felt invisible. And then there was Ryan. Ryan was my colleague, a project manager with an effortless charm and a presence that made everyone in the room take notice. He wasn't just attractive, he was magnetic. He had a way of making people feel like they were the most important person in the world when he spoke to them. And I had begun to crave that attention. I told myself our interactions were innocent, that it was just friendly banter, nothing more. But deep down, I knew better. That night, as I walked into the dimly lit cafe across from our office, I saw him sitting at a corner table, his sleeves rolled up, his fingers drumming lightly against his coffee cup. He looked up and smiled when he saw me, and for a moment, the weight of my responsibilities melted away. "You look exhausted," he said as I sat down. I laughed softly. "Long day." He leaned in slightly, his voice lower now. "You work too hard, Emily." The way he said my name sent a shiver down my spine. I knew I should have excused myself, made up an excuse about needing to get home, but I didn't. Instead, I let myself sink into the conversation, into the way he made me feel seen. It wasn't until I was driving home that the guilt set in. Daniel was waiting for me, half asleep on the couch with a book resting on his chest. When I walked in, he stirred and gave me a sleepy smile. "Hey, you're home late," he murmured, stretching. I leaned down and kissed his forehead, the guilt gnawing at me. "Yeah, long day at the office." He pulled me down onto the couch, wrapping an arm around me. "You work too hard, Em." The words were almost identical to Ryan's, but they didn't have the same effect. Instead of making my heart race, they felt like an afterthought. Over the next few weeks, my late nights became more frequent, and so did my encounters with Ryan. We never crossed any lines, at least not physically, but the emotional connection was undeniable. We texted constantly, our conversations filled with playful teasing, deep confessions, and stolen glances across the office. One night, after another long day, he walked me to my car. It had started to rain, and we stood there, neither of us making a move to leave. "You ever think about just escaping?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I swallowed hard, my pulse quickening. "What do you mean?" He exhaled, running a hand through his damp hair. "Getting away from all of this. Just forgetting responsibilities, expectations. Living." I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came out. Because for the first time in a long time, I wanted that too. I wanted to feel alive again. And then it happened. He reached out, his fingers brushing against mine. It was the lightest touch, but it sent a shock wave through me. I should have pulled away. I should have ended it there. But I didn't. Instead, I stepped closer. The first kiss was hesitant, a moment suspended in time where I had the chance to stop, to walk away. But the second kiss was desperate, fueled by weeks of longing and suppressed desire. His hands found my waist, pulling me against him, and I let him. For the first time in years, I felt wanted. The affair started slowly. Late-night coffee breaks turned into stolen moments behind closed doors, whispered conversations laced with tension, touches that lingered longer than they should have. The guilt followed me home every night, but the thrill of it drowned it out, until Daniel started noticing. "You've been distracted lately," he said one evening as we sat across from each other at the dinner table. I forced a smile. "Just work stress." He studied me for a long moment, then nodded, but I could see the doubt in his eyes. He wasn't convinced. And for the first time, the weight of my choices started to feel unbearable. One evening, as I sat in my car outside Ryan's apartment, my phone rang. It was Daniel. I hesitated before answering, my voice shaky. "Hey, where are you?" I looked up at the dimly lit window of Ryan's place, my heart pounding. "Just out, running errands." There was silence on the other end, and then a quiet. "Come home, Em." The way he said it, so soft yet filled with something that sounded dangerously close to heartbreak, nearly broke me. I hung up and stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror. Who had I become? I turned the car around and drove home. That night, I lay beside Daniel, listening to his steady breathing, my mind racing. The life we had built together flashed before my eyes. Our first home, the birth of our children, the quiet Sunday mornings spent in bed. Had I really been willing to throw it all away? I knew what I had to do. Ending things with Ryan wasn't easy. When I told him, he didn't try to stop me. He just looked at me with those piercing eyes and said, "Are you sure this is what you want?" I nodded, though my heart ached. "I have to try." And with that, I walked away. Rebuilding my marriage wasn't simple. Trust, once broken, isn't easily repaired. I confessed to Daniel, sparing him the details, but telling him enough to shatter the foundation of our relationship. There were tears, anger, nights spent apart, but there was also love. One evening, as we sat on the porch, Daniel reached for my hand. "I don't know if I can forget, Em," he admitted, his voice raw, "but I want to try." And so we did. Looking back, I realized how dangerously close I came to losing everything. The affair wasn't about Ryan. It was about me, about the parts of myself I had neglected, the longing for something more. But in the end, I found that what I was searching for had been right in front of me all along. I just had to fight for it. And I did. If you found yourself drawn into Emily's story, don't forget to reflect on the choices we make and the consequences that follow. Love isn't just about passion. It's about commitment, about choosing each other even when things get tough. Because sometimes the greatest love stories aren't about how they begin, but how they survive.